Hi, welcome to Two Non-Doctors. I'm Liz Mealy.
I'm Maria Shahada.
We've gotten a fair amount of very nice comments about pasta, in my mind, ruining our episode, our couple episodes ago. I mean, she's been on every episode. I have to say, I read a couple of them before we came on, and it made me feel better because people are like, what are you talking about? It's Liz, Maria, and pasta.
Yeah, I hated that. Stealing the show, that bitch. She's stealing the thunder.
She is stealing the thunder. Also, I wonder if she does, like, the reason she's so annoying is she has contributions, because like a part of me, like, we're all talking out of her ass and trying to figure things out. And what if we were just like, I wonder if that's what that is? And she's like, it's not, you're stupid. I read all day. Like, what if in her cat language, she's like, I have a PhD.
She's just like, oh my God, these fucking idiots.
She's like 84 years old. I'm sure she has a higher education I didn't know about while I was touring the world. So I started having auditions. I don't know. It's just a level of pressure in another world I don't understand. I had an audition on Thursday where I had to play a hot girl in her 20s. Mm-hmm. Oh God. You know what I mean? Like, just in general, I was like, oh God, I'm glad I've been moisturizing extra for the last 9 months to prepare me to
You could totally pass for a hot girl in your 20s.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I wasn't fishing, but thank you. But it is a little bit like, there's one thing to like not look your age. There's another thing to be like, oh, fuck, there's going to be a bunch of hot girls in her 20s also auditioning.
Oh, there's nothing worse than going to a casting or an audition and seeing everyone else they called in. And you go, oh, Christ, oh, fuck me. What, like, they were just like, we want blonde, blue-eyed, like, beautiful white girl. But we might want someone brown, so can you just throw in a few brown people? I don't know.
What I also think is kind of happening, because I now see it on the sheets, is it's like, this is what we want. We want this kind of whatever white lady, but we're open to diversity. We would never tell anybody, like, they have to. So I think what they kind of are like, we're looking for a blonde white girl, but they're like,
we have to say any diversity.
Yeah, just throw a lady in there. I was like, I saw it. It was a funny script. Like, it was a funny sitcom, whatever. And it was fine. It's very nice that my agents feel that way about me. I was like, oh my God, do you think I'm hot? But I had not showered in 4 days. My hair was a curly knot on my head, like, no exaggeration. With curly, there's no way of that. Has to be washed and conditioned and detangled and just a beehive of a mess. And I remember, and this goes with like our insight episode or intuition, I remember at like 9 o'clock being like, should I shower tonight so my hair's dry in the morning and I can just straighten it? And I was like, no, I'm not going to tape it until 3. I have plenty of time. And I don't like having wet hair at night. And then I woke up to a knock at the door. It was these 2 plumbers, because I've had issues with leaking in my room, but nobody ever told me. So I was like, I don't think you're supposed to like talk to the guy, but I don't think you need to do anything. If you need to do anything, it's going to be the upstairs neighbors. Didn't think anything of it. And then I go to make tea and there's no water. And I'm like, what the fuck? There's no water in the entire. So I call up the plumber. He's like, I don't know what to tell you. He's like, it's probably off all day. And I was like, it can't be off all day. I was like, ugh. So then I go to the basement to these 2 guys, barely speak English.
There's just 2 guys in the basement.
Just 2 guys in the basement. One of our
they just hang out there all day, like Sopranos type table, just hanging out, playing chess. Just. You're like the Queen's Gambit going down there like, hey guys, I don't have any water. What's this game?
I have 2 erasers.
Your whole life changes. Yeah.
Also, I'm just like, I'm watching them play chess and I'm like, hey, fix the fucking the fucking pipe so I can take a shower. So I see these 2 guys. I'm already in like a weird basement. I'm like, hey, and I'm trying not to be like a Karen-like person. I was like, hey, hi, you look great. When is this going to be done? And they're like, I don't know. And I was like, but like, if you were going to guess, and they're like a couple hours, and this is like 9 a.m. And I was like noon, like, I'm like, give me something, give me some hope. And they're like, maybe 1. And I'm like, ugh. So I'm like anxious. Like, I went for a walk with my roommate to get coffee. I'm like talking, you know, when like you're freaking out about something, and this is such a silly thing to freak out about, by the way, but you know, when you're freaking out about something and you're trying to distract yourself and nothing's working, like my roommate Chris is talking at me and I'm like, that's so crazy.
It's not a silly thing to freak out about, because self-taping is so stressful. Self-taping is so stressful. I heard myself. Yeah. But it is, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how long it's going to take you to get the right take. You don't know what your hair is going to do. You don't know what your face is going to do. You don't know if you're going to fuck up uploading it, accidentally delete it, or there's some reason you can't upload it, or you think you sent it and you didn't send it. Like, to get it in by that deadline, you have to be ready like hours in advance. And plus from the deadline, right? But then there's the hours that it takes to get ready. So so you have this small window that shit needs to get done. And if you can't, because for some fucked up reason you don't have water, of course you're stressed. Fuck that. Well, I wouldn't have been able to talk either.
Yeah, well, already I'm like memorizing like 5 pages of like banter. You know, I've already kind of scheduled my roommate to read for me, to use his camera, to like, I had like everything all set up for this window, on top of the fact that we can't really miss this window because it's due a couple hours later. It's not like I'm just playing a person. I'm supposed to look like this well-polished person, and I'm like the grossest minion looking person. So I'm like kind of just like anxious all day, and I'm trying to calm myself down. And then all of a sudden I had an epiphany where I was like, so I was supposed to like go to a grocery store that's kind of far away with my roommate, canceled that. And then I was supposed to get dinner, an early dinner with a friend, canceled that. And the only thing I can't cancel is I had a gig at like 8:30, but hopefully, it's 10 a.m. And now I'm like, I should be able to make an 8:30 gig, but things are getting canceled. I'm figuring it out, and I'm going, okay, shower, that's like 10 minutes. And then I'll blow dry my hair and straighten my hair. That's like a half hour. Put on makeup. That's like another 10, 15 minutes. I can do this. Like, I get this done, like this part done in an hour. And then hopefully the other thing is an hour. And I'm just like literally saying my schedule over and over again in my head to calm down. So finally at 1, I go back in the basement, and I'm getting like, I almost wish I baked cookies in those times. Like, hi, just a little treat. Just a little motivation. But I had to be like, anything? And they're like, we don't know. And I'm like, how do you not know? Like, you're working on it. But in my mind, I was like, how crazy do I come across? Because I'm like acting like this is an emergency. And how is a shower to anybody else considered an emergency?
Because what are you doing anyway? It's lockdown. So it's like, do you really have anything that pressing? And like an audition would be the one thing that was super pressing that you have to shower for right now.
Yeah, but there's no way to explain to somebody how important having water is right now.
No, especially when they're at their job trying to do it.
Being gross. But this is my favorite part of the story. I'm at my computer. It's like almost 2:00, and I hear my toilet bubbling. And I was like, oh, water. I was like, water is happening. So I'm like flushing toilets, turning on faucets, running around the apartment. I was like, water's back. So I turn on the shower. I see water come out, and I'm like, awesome. I should have thought maybe they're testing it, but that's not where my head is. They said in a couple of hours, water's coming. So I turn on the shower, I jump in, and within, I would say 2 minutes, it starts to really slow down. And I have shampoo in my hair, and I'm like, no, like freaking out. I was like, no. So I get most of the shampoo out, but it's still a big knot, and I have to condition my hair. So I'm like, okay, I know there's a bunch of buildup of cold water because I only turned on the hot water. I know I'm going to get a big bucket of cold water when I turn this on that's just kind of resting in the pipes, but it's going to have to be quick, and it's going to be very cold. So I was like, all right, get the conditioner in. I'm just like a shivering puppy in a shower. And then I was like, and I literally was like, are you ready? And I'm like, yes. And I was like, I literally was like scream conditioning my hair. Also, I was supposed to like shave my legs. That's out the door. Like I was wearing like a tiny dress.
I mean, you really didn't need to do that for anything.
Yeah, you have to do like all the things have told me they want a full body shot.
Oh, okay.
You
so
submit it.
They're going like,
yeah, they want to see. Yeah,
guess that's a choice.
My roommates are good people, because the amount of times I've come out of my room almost like Kramer, like just like kind of like this like crazy, and I just say something insane, but I like come out of my room, I'm like dressed to the nine, like I look like I'm going to a cocktail party, and I'm like, can you see how hairy my legs are? And Chris is like, no. And I was like, okay, good. Well, if you can, will you do some like movie magic? He goes, of course. And I was like, okay. And he knew I was freaking out all day, but I'm like, I just come out of my room a million times a day, just saying like mid conversation, saying the most insane stuff. And they've never made me feel bad. Half the time I watch them listen, and I'm like, they're such good people. They're good people.
Yeah.
So I took a shower. This is what that story is about.
I couldn't believe you tried to get in that they were good people as part of the moral to this story. That wasn't in there. I'm sorry. This was a story about a shower.
But they are,
and
though.
it was a 10-minute long story about a shower. Yes, they are good people, but that's not what this is about. And you tried to change it.
Insane I am. You know, the last part of this is you always worry you go through this excessive amount of work, and then your agent's like, could you do da-da-da? And you're like, no. So I literally, because I couldn't have that happen for mental reasons, I was like, hey, it's been a hell of a day. This is the best I could do. And she's like, this is great. And I was like, that was the only acceptable answer.
Yeah. Any note would have destroyed you.
Destroyed me.
Like, do you think you could do it again, but with your hair pulled back? No, I can't. I can't. No. I hope you die.
Your legs look hairy and it looks like you're crying. Could you do something about that? And you're like,
no, that was a character choice. Yeah. And I'm going with it.
It's my best take. But that's what, like, I haven't auditioned, I don't know, in like 10 years. Like, I haven't been doing this stuff. It's exciting to be thrown into this world, but also this isn't what I care about. You know, when you feel like you're showing up for somebody else and you're like, am I showing up correctly because I don't have it inside me to know what I'm supposed to feel? Like a friend tells you they're going to have a baby. Like, I don't care about kids. I don't really want to have kids. But like, if a friend comes and goes, I'm going to have a baby, you go, what is the correct response? I think it's not excitement.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Which is what I did when Kat told me she was pregnant. I was like, you're not pregnant, are you? Like, in the most sitcom.
Yeah.
Oh, God damn it.
Also, you have to, you know, how we feel about having a baby has changed over the years. So you're just like, I have to write the right response because how I feel about babies doesn't matter in this situation. And that's almost how I feel about auditioning right now, which is I'm grateful for it. It could lead to more opportunities. And this is something I never really did. And who knows, maybe I will like it. But as I'm doing the whole process, memorizing lines, taping it, sending it to my agents, I'm going, is this good? Is this what you want? Should I be excited? Should I not care about? Like, I'm finding myself like not exactly knowing. Like, I don't feel that way with joke writing. I'm excited to write the joke. I'm excited when like a line works. I'm excited about the puzzle.
Yeah, but all the validation's there. And if it's not there while you're writing it, you know it'll be there because you've gotten the instant validation for years. So you know when you'll get it, when you might not get it, but you will eventually get it. But with acting, there's feedback at all. If you don't get cast in something, you're probably not going to get cast in things. So that's not even feedback because they could have loved you.
Yeah.
But they just didn't cast you because you weren't tall enough or you weren't blonde. And
Doesn't
then
it upset you that you have to say your height in it? They're just like, hey, can you just say your name?
I know it's over as soon as I have to say my height. But yeah. I'm waiting for the one day that works out for me because the man they've cast, the Tom Cruise-esque 5'1" man they've cast, needs someone to make him look like a giant. And the one time that'll work out, you know.
And then we walk in and we're like, you're welcome.
Yeah. But you're just not getting the feedback either way. So it's hard.
It's all right. You're my coach. In my life.
Yeah, which is why I haven't gotten anything.
No, shut up. You're amazing.
Thanks.
Should we get into announcements?
Yes.
Our Patreons. Thank you so much to all our patrons. You guys are wonderful. We appreciate you. If you don't know, we have bonuses. We have early access to episodes, stickers. You can control our Googles. You can be a physical Google guest. Not physical, virtual Google guest on our show. And then starting in March, I think, we'll actually have bonuses every week as opposed to just every month. So
the end of February, yeah.
End of February, early March, more bonuses coming at you. Be a Patreon. Enjoy our bonuses.
Follow us on social media. We're on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, it's at 2nondoctors, and then with the number 2. And then on Instagram, it's at 2nondrs with the number 2. Thank you to everyone who has written like reviews of us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. They help us. They help us get seen. They help us feel good. We say it every week. We mean it. And so thank you for actually writing in and letting us know that you're enjoying the podcast. It means a lot to us, letting us know publicly.
Thanks for saying nice things in public.
UK listeners, come on. UK listeners, we could use a few more reviews from you all. And because like it's separate, it's different than the US one.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't understand.
Me either.
You want to get into fan mail?
Okay. All right. So fan mail. We have an email from Rachel. She wrote in about our reckless self-abandonment episode. And this is what she says. I learned so much from the reckless self-abandonment episode. I hadn't heard of the term before. I have a live-in landlord, and I think she's trying to force me to self-abandon to suit her needs. I've learned to shut myself down. I think it's disassociate. Remember, we talked about that, like not on the podcast yet. Because in the past, my family gave me no room to feel anything and labeled me difficult every time I tried to have a conversation about my feelings. The phrase, "If you are crying, I'll give you a reason to cry," was thrown around a lot. I was a sick kid, and a lot of my favorite people died around me through cancer and suicide. I'm starting to allow myself to feel these feelings and stand up for myself and provide myself with what I need to function in a way that is contrary to self-abandoning. And I don't like being made to feel like I'm a bad person because I won't self-abandon for the sake of a stranger I live with. She also always says that you can't argue with someone's feelings and has actually given me really bad work advice based on this notion. I'm curious to what you guys think about the idea that you can't argue with someone's feelings.
Thank you, Rachel. I related to when you're crying, I'll give you something to cry about. Like, yeah, I was like, immediately I was like, are you Italian? I feel like that's so much of what my family is like, my dad was like, control your emotions. And I feel like everybody else is like, I'll give you something to cry about. And you're just like, you're supposed to be my family. Like, like, what kind of soothing is that? But yeah, I think in a lot of ways, a lot of adults are starting to learn that this covering up of feelings is a form of teaching children that will become adults to abandon and at some point not even know how to feel. Like literally, like I spent most of my life not being able to identify my actual emotions because I was pulled so separated from them. So I had to do so much work in therapy of both identifying my emotions, then feeling my emotions and working through them because they were just so unattached. What Rachel said about what her landlord said, which is you can't fight with someone's feelings. I mean, it's so complex. And we've talked about this, which is, yes, your feelings are your feelings, but your feelings are jumbled in with your life. They're so completely intertwined with your past, so that if I was abused, I might see everybody as an abuser. And if you were neglected, you might see that everybody doesn't like you and doesn't want to be around you. So your feelings are your feelings. That's how you're interpreting the world based on your past. But that doesn't mean it's reality. You know, she might be giving you advice about your work environment, saying, you know, she's trying to manipulate you and she's trying to get something over you and you need to tell her to fuck off. And the truth of the matter is she might have a past of people doing that to her. And now she sees everybody as manipulative and as everybody as the enemy. And she's giving you this skewed advice based on her perspective. That's not real. That's not based in reality. That's based on pain that's been unprocessed. So yes, her feelings are her feelings, but her feelings are based in unprocessed trauma that's guiding her to see a different reality than that's actually there. The flip side of that is my trauma can also make me see things in a way that people might not see it. So we'll use the abuse thing. I might have been abused as a kid, dealt with that situation, and now might be extra sensitive and see stuff that people might not see. Like you hear about like maybe like a flight attendant noticing that a kid is really uncomfortable on the plane and it doesn't really feel like a father-daughter relationship, and only to find out she's being sex trafficked. No.
Trafficked. I don't know.
Trafficked. Thank you. I couldn't get that out. So, and that's a very extreme example, but your past depicts your reality, but that doesn't mean it's a real reality, especially if it's been skewed in a negative way. And it could also be skewed in a positive way. It could be, you know, your parents were good to you and things always worked out. So you're going around being like, everything works out. You don't have to worry. Everything works out. And you're like, hey, Trish, not everything works out. Like my car is being towed and this isn't like, everybody's reality is skewed on their past. There is a reason not to trust everybody's advice, especially if you like, this is like a silly example, but I had a friend that I would tell her about a guy and she would be like, oh, he sounds creepy. And that wasn't my perspective at all. I might just be talking about him because I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about him or whatever. And I remember she did this to me a couple of times over the years. And then I was like, I think she has a problem with guys because these guys aren't, you know what I mean? Like there's no evidence that they're being like, I'm like, something must have happened to her in the past, or she must have been raised with somebody that put that in her head, because she's the worst person to go to about early relationship butterflies or wondering, because she would always skew that every guy sounded creepy. And I was like, hey, I know creepy. Like, you know what I mean? Like I've experienced creepy. This isn't creepy behavior. So that's where it gets difficult. So yes, their feelings are their feelings, but what made them feel that way?
Like in a relationship, you don't want to say that somebody's feelings are not right. You don't want to invalidate somebody's reality, because there's like a point where you start gaslighting. But at the same time, like your reality is different than their reality. And so it's just like, that's something I don't know how to navigate. Like, that's the thing, like when the holistic psychologist, when I sent you that post and I was like, how do you validate somebody else's position while not invalidating your own? And if you're directly at odds about what happened or what you're fighting about, you felt what you felt and that's right, but that's wrong because that's not what I meant. You know what I mean? It's like, it's really.
Absolutely. And I think in a relationship, step away from like the landlord example that Rachel gave us, in a relationship, the common goal is to take care of each other. It's to love, respect, and take care of each other. So if things get misconstrued where they're misinterpreting what you're doing, you can always go back to, what do you think I'm trying to do? Or you think I'm trying to get one over you or screw you over or fuck you over? What I'm trying to do is take care of you. I'm going to miss the mark sometimes because we're still getting to know each other, and you're taking two separate lives that have lived without being connected to each other and smashing them together. There's going to be, mistakes and misinterpretations and what have you. But where it gets difficult and where I've struggled is where somebody interprets me as trying to fuck them over, and you're like, I love you. Like, I'm bending over backwards to be the person that you're excited to see, while not, clearly self-abandoning. And you're taking even what seems so like baseline, no way to misinterpret it, and you're making me feel like a monster. Like, I'm bringing home a cookie and you're like, what, you fucking think I need a cookie? And you're like, hey man, how do you misinterpret a cookie? I like cookies. I thought maybe you would like a cookie. How can you? But that's where you start to butt heads, where somebody, no matter how you present it, is taking it to a reality where you're like, there's nothing I can do there. So kind of bringing it back to Rachel, she also talked about how like her landlord's trying to make her self-abandon, and how do you put down these boundaries? At some point you have to just accept that people aren't going to like you, and people are going to think you're difficult. And that's the part of abandoning your feelings and the people pleasing, is that we abandon ourselves so that people like us, and so that people want to be around us, or people don't think we're difficult. But at some point you have to be okay that they're never going to see your reality, that they're never going to think that you're a good person and that's where you have to just know, like, I'm not the problem here. I'm not the one that's that's
the hardest part, is just like being okay with they're not going to see it my way. They're not going to like me, but I can't just be okay with something for ease of conflict.
Absolutely. And like, I struggle with that with my dad, because he has these harsh rules of what he thinks a good person is, and a good daughter, and a good family member. And I've pushed back on that. And I know he's said things where he's been disappointed or angry at me. And I know that doesn't matter. Like, I have to, like, it hurts. It doesn't feel good to have somebody that you care about and cares about you mad at you or disappointed or thinks you're a bad person. But I know that I'm not a bad person. I know that I'm showing up for everybody in the best possible way, while also being true to myself. And it's not going to look the way that this one person wants it to look. Fortunately, I don't live under my father's roof anymore. And my dad is somebody I talk to once every couple of weeks, and I try to, have a good relationship with. It gets more difficult probably with a live-in super, or a boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, or if you are a younger person still living under the roof of your family. But boundaries, especially when you start setting them, it's always going to be a pushback. It's always going to be that person feeling like you're doing something wrong because they no longer have control over you, but also you're switching gears. Think about how your parents felt when you changed majors, where you're like, hey, I'm going to go to school to become a doctor. And then after 2 years, you're like, I think I'm going to get into like interpretive dance. And they're like, what? No. And you're like, there's no here. I don't want to do this thing. I want to do this thing. This is what feels good to me. I'm going to go do this. But they've already set up the expectations for what they want from you. And you're saying, I'm not going to do that. And there's always going to be a pushback. They might come around.
Living with your landlord is fuck that. Because they're always going to have the power. It's their house, their rules. And they're never going to just be like, no, you're right. Let me compromise in my house. It's always going to feel like you're in my house. And so I would never want to live with a landlord.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually when I've looked for apartments, I'm like, where is this landlord? You know what I mean? Like it's become I know you've dealt with it. I've dealt with bad supers. I've never dealt with I think a live-in landlord. In some ways, you also do have the power in the sense that you pay your rent. I would say it's only in like a market, old New York market, where like they could kick you out in a second.
Yeah.
Maybe new markets with everything sucking right now, you actually do have more power because less people are moving in. I don't know where you live, Rachel. I think the biggest issue that I hear is that you're like, this person's gonna not like me. And you're gonna have to get used to people not liking you so that you can like yourself. And that's the weirdest lesson to learn as an adult. That to get back to who you are and to like what you do and to show up for you, there's gonna be people that don't like you.
Thanks for writing in, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel. Googles?
Yes. Our Google guest this week, he is a comedian and podcaster, host of the Let There Be Talk podcast. It's Dean Delray.
Yay!
Yeah. What did you Google this week about your health?
I never Google my health anymore.
Okay.
Because I know what the fuck's gonna happen. You know, I'm at that age. I'm gonna be 55 next week, where you just don't want to Google anything about you because it's all death. I got diabetes like 4 years ago or whatever. I'm one of those guys where I felt good my whole life, and then all of a sudden I was like, something's fucking wrong. And then I, started Googling it, and then it got worse in my brain. It enhanced me feeling terrible.
Did you self-diagnose the diabetes and then go to the doctor and have it confirmed?
No, I was on stage and I started like getting all clammy. I thought, oh, this is a panic attack. This is weird. I go, I'll just write it out. And I kind of faked through this hour set and went up in my room. I was like ice cold. My feet started burning. And I went to the hospital and they're like, whoa, dude, your sugar's through the roof. I was juicing every day thinking this is going to get me healthy. And I kind of juiced myself into diabetes.
Oh,
whoa.
Oh, wow. Because it was about 4 or 5 years ago that whole juicing trend happened. Did you watch Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead?
No, what happened was I got run over on my motorcycle and I couldn't really, I had broke ribs and shit. And I was like, I'm just going to kind of juice and eat super healthy and kind of fix my inner core. It was a gnarly crash. Some woman ran me over, hit and run. So I was juicing like 4 times a day and eating acai berry bowls and shit. I'm like, I'm fucking getting healthy. And it was completely the opposite. You can drink all the green juice you want, but I was drinking stuff like,
Berry Blast.
Oh, all that shit. You think you're doing yourself good and it's the worst thing you can do.
So was it something that was like underlining and then the juicing threw it over?
Well, I'm sure that I would eventually have got it because I was like 40 over and I ate candy all night while I was doing comedy. And then I would eat French toast at the 101 cafe at 3 a.m. So it was coming. I absolutely love candy to this day. And weird ones like Pez, all the gummy stuff, like especially when I'm in like Europe. Like Amsterdam, they got all those gummy stores. I'm like 50 years old eating candy. Walking down, smoking hash, like an animal.
I imagine it was hard to give up. Was it just like, well, if I don't, I die?
I didn't have healthcare at the time. And they go, okay, so here's the deal. You have diabetes. You're going to need this insulin. It's going to be $800 a month. And I was like, I don't even make that a month right now. I'm trying to pay rent. This is 5 years ago. And then I ran into another comedian, Josh Wolf, who had just got diagnosed with like pre-diabetes. And he hit me to this book. I just reset my body. And in a matter of 3 months, I didn't have it anymore.
That's incredible.
Oh, shit. You saved yourself a lot of money there.
What was the book?
What was the book?
Candy
The Diabetes Code. Okay.
Yeah, Jason Fung. I think the worst thing about quitting sugar is people emailing you nonstop, asking you how you did it. It's like when somebody asks you how you got somewhere in comedy so quick or whatever. They think you just overnight, and then when you show them
it's work.
4,800 sets you did, know, they go, oh.
I just want to be the rock star. I don't want to fucking practice every day.
Yeah, right. So with sugar, it's the same thing. I quit that day. I remember I was eating at the 101 when I got the call from the doctor, and he goes, yep, you got diabetes. And I was like, this is the last French toast right here. And
Still ate it.
Yeah, oh, I ate that. I think I had just finished it. And then that was it. I never had sugar again. And people go, well, it's so hard. It's like, fuck yeah, it's hard. But you know what's harder? Walking with one foot.
If I am so passionate about doing comedy, if I had a family, or like this way people say they quit smoking when their daughter's like, Daddy, are you going to die? It's interesting to find out about the catalyst.
It was like, do I like sugar more than comedy? Absolutely not. I don't like anything more than comedy. That was going through my mind. Like, what do I eat now? Fuck, I'm on an airplane. What do? I got to bring special meals. I had to learn how to live. I say, I know everything about a 49 Harley Davidson. I don't know one thing about my body. I love you guys, and miss you, Maria. Have not seen you
tons.
in years. And it was good to meet you, Liz. What's your last name?
Mealy?
Liz Mealy.
Yeah.
I'll take a Liz Mealy with a side of fries. I don't know what the fuck. I just acted like I was ordering something on the menu.
And in London, apparently, a Liz Mealy with a side of
Liz Mealy medium rare.
Thank you, Dean. We're glad you came on.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Dean.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was just watching something on YouTube. A commercial pops on. As I'm about to like skip this commercial, I hear this woman be like, well, I had eczema, so I had an autoimmune disease, and then my boyfriend got cancer. And I was like, wait, hold up. Eczema is an autoimmune disease? I've never heard that.
Psoriasis.
I know. And that's what's weird about it, is they've always paired eczema and psoriasis. Like whenever like any lotion, any issue, they've always put it in the same boat, but they have never called eczema an autoimmune disease. And I have, gone to the doctor years ago, I thought I had Crohn's disease. I probably have, I've muted my IBS if I have it. Like it's not nearly as bad as it was years ago, to the point where I feel like I don't have it. And then I had a small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, which who knows if I still have that or not. Again, things have gotten better from diet. I got a bunch of tests for autoimmune diseases because I thought I had one. And then everything came up that I didn't. So then I hear her label eczema as an autoimmune disease. And I immediately was like, is eczema an autoimmune disease? First thing that comes up, April 2020, they now discover eczema is an autoimmune disease because of this testing of a drug. I was like, what? It's like that recent. And I was like, oh. Which is crazy. So basically, this is from Healthline. It says, first time study proves eczema is an autoimmune disease, an experimental drug that works by blocking the immune response that causes the itchy skin patches, promising treatment for eczema. And then, and I think that's it. But I was like, I read most of the article, but it was kind of like, it sounds really silly. I kind of suspected it, but nothing ever said it was. So it's like, I'm not a doctor. Who am I to be like, I'm pretty sure I have it. But I've gotten pretty close to doing like an autoimmune diet. I've always suspected I had some kind of autoimmune disease. I just feel kind of vindicated. Like I just kind of feel a little bit like, I fucking knew. I knew before these fucking scientists that I had an autoimmune disease. I'm going to clearly do more research. Clearly, even this is very muted and early, especially with them always putting eczema and psoriasis together. It just kind of makes sense. And the fact that I even, it's come back and I need to get back on my diet to feel better. But the fact that I even fixed it years ago with diet and taking these things, it's inflammation. That's why it's happening. So what's making you have inflammation of the skin? Probably something you're putting in your body or on your body, depending on what it is. But I know mine's diet related, and I've just been ignoring it out of sadness. It weirdly made me feel, that was a Google about feeling better.
That's great. It's nice to have answers too, isn't it? It's just like, because you've been dealing with eczema forever.
Life.
And
literally since I was a baby.
And they were just like, oh, hey, here's some news about it.
Yeah.
Great.
What's your Google?
My Google is, why do vision boards work?
Oh.
I didn't want to know how they worked or what happens. I didn't want to hear stories about somebody like, I put an airplane on my vision board and suddenly I was like I had 3 airplanes, I didn't want that. I've heard enough of that. I just want to know,
you
why.
were Amelia Earhart. That was.
I wish my name was Amelia.
Great name.
Because I think they do work. I think the law of attraction works. I think it's been around for long enough. What I found when I did a vision board was that it mentally clarified what I wanted, and it simplified what I wanted, and it just gave me a vision like, this is it. And I was like, oh, well, to achieve that, I need to do this. And then I sat down and I wrote a treatment and I started writing an outline for my book. And like, it just cleared all the noise in my head about everything I want to do, you know? So I stopped thinking like I could be a pianist, you know? And they asked a neurologist. That's what I'm looking for. Science.
Not this flowery some girl that has a blog for like Shape magazine. That's
dude, and it gets hundreds of thousands of views, these things on YouTube, just somebody being like, you know, it's just like, it changed my life. And I gave money away. And then it came back to me like threefold, you know? So if you want to give money away, my PayPal is, and you're just
yeah.
So vision boards prime your brain to recognize opportunity. So the brain has a process called value tagging, which imprints important things onto your subconscious and filters out unnecessary information. The brain assigns a higher value to images than written words on a to-do list. And the more you look at those images, the more those images move up in importance. And if you look at it right before you fall asleep every night, the images will imprint even further. As your brain transitions from wakefulness to sleep, lucid thoughts, dreaming, and creativity occur. Those images tend to dominate your dreams and pattern your thoughts. It's known as the Tetris effect. And after the 1980s, oh God, that makes me so sad. It said after the 1980s video game. It's like, I know that. Who doesn't? Oh, I'm old. But once the images have embedded in your psyche, Swartz says, they act as a visual directory and your brain will start to filter data that is not relevant to them, which is what I think happened. So I think that I narrowed down what I wanted. And then it's just like everything else just shut up. And it was like, this is what I need to do to get that.
Because we're very crafty people, we're creatives. We can't make money the normal way, so now we're trying to find different ways to make money. So there is a little bit like, maybe I could do this, and then it's like, hey, what are you trying to do? Like there is a little bit like, especially when you're like physically like cutting out a picture or, you know, printing something, like whatever it is. I'm such a visual person that like makes sense to me that I'm just like, yes.
Yeah. And I found like printing things actually works better than cutting out a picture, because I had like a ton of magazines before I had a printer that could print anything. And so I cut out a bunch of pictures that were like fine, but like it wasn't super what I wanted, but it was just like they were fashion magazines. So I was like, I kind of like this. But then when I started thinking of things to print out, like a full laughing crowd, you know, for all of our touring we're going to do, then it's me specifically making that choice. So it's like, I know it's important to me because I've zeroed in on that. It's true that imagining something can result in tangible benefits. Studies have shown that people who imagine themselves flexing a muscle achieve actual physical strength. So a lot of sports people do this. A lot of athletes do this. They use visualization to see them achieving what they want physically to help in their actual practices. Yeah. And then the third thing I found really, really cool. So it can reduce the stress around taking action. Swartz says that using an action board regularly, she calls it action board because everybody has to be different. Normally, when you try something new, the body has a stress response releasing cortisol and adrenaline. In other words, new things can be scary. However, when you repeatedly look at images related to your goal, your brain no longer sees them as new. The process reduces the physiological fear response to any situation or person, making you more likely to take healthy risks, collaborate, and embrace opportunity, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah. So I know they've been around for a while, and I know they can be seen as like girly, or don't take this word wrong, I just don't know another word, but like immature. Like they can be seen as very like young girl kind of thing. But at the same time, every adult has some form of it. It just might not be this magazine version, if that makes sense. Like everybody,
a lot of high power executives use it, like executive coaches, they have them do vision boards. It's not a teenage girl thing to do unless you're putting boas on it or something. Putting glitter on your vision
or like
board.
lipstick, and you're like, I hope I get this shade of pink. I can't, it's out of order, I can't find it. No, but I think most people kind of see it as this very idealistic dreamer entryway, when really it actually has foundation in how people achieve their dreams and goals. And I really liked how you talked about how it like basically focused you into what you actually want, and not just being all over, you know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna be Oprah, I'm gonna fly kites.
Yeah. Like, well, as Johnny pointed out, nowhere on your vision board is you coaching people. And like, no offense, like I love the people I coach. I think they're fantastic, but like, I don't want to coach forever. And he was just like, that's just not on there. And I was like, that's true. So I'm putting my efforts into getting more of those situations and taking the time I now have and putting into what's on my board.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Let's get personal.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your biggest fear with post-COVID life?
It's mostly stand-up related. I'm afraid I'll have lost any muscles, stand-up muscles. I'm afraid that my jokes from before aren't going to be relevant anymore. Like I know from going on after the first lockdown and then performing, it does come back right away. But there's sort of that fear of like, do I want to tell jokes that everyone's telling about COVID, or do I want to just tell like pre-COVID life jokes? And then I'm afraid I'm not going to want to do anything anymore because I'm so used to staying in. I really like staying in. It just, that kind of comes very naturally to me, like just not going out at night. And I was doing my taxes, and I was noticing how many shows I did, and I was like, shit, I was running around fucking everywhere, any time of day, sometimes 4 shows a day. And it was just like, I'm afraid I'm not going to do that ever again.
Because you're not motivated, not because it's not possible.
Right. I'm afraid like that's insane to me now. Like, I'm afraid the traveling I did, the running around the shows and like doing everything, I never really stopped and just like, I just said yes to everything, but I'm afraid that I won't get back into that sort of flow again.
I'm weirdly the opposite. I'm afraid it's not even going to be there. Like, I'm afraid that people won't come out to clubs. People won't be able to afford clubs. Clubs will shut down. I'm afraid my lifestyle won't be available to come back to, both in a touring sense and in a people being able to afford or come out sense, or that it'll still be too dangerous, or people will be too scared whenever things do kind of open up a little bit more. I mean, I have even larger fears of how long this is going to take, but I have this fear that we're going to open the doors and it like a bomb that went off, there's going to be nothing there in a comedic sense.
I don't have that fear at all. And I don't know if it's because like between lockdowns, it did come back and people were out and shows sold out more. Well, because they were like half capacity, but like people were dying to see comedy and talk about what the fuck they just went through. And I don't have that fear at all. I think it'll definitely restore. I mean, the recession will be a problem. Yeah. But I think people are always going to want to go see comedy shows.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it both from a New York standpoint and an America standpoint on my end, where like New York, everything was always kind of sold out and fun and awesome because we got tourists. Even though we're not the epicenter again, we were the epicenter, and then kind of America's the epicenter. You have to get like a bunch of vaccinations when you go to Africa. That's just how it is. If you're going to go, you have to get a bunch of vaccinations. Now I'm like, are there extra steps people are going to have to take to an already very expensive city? Even with everything being fucked, we're still pretty expensive, but it was worth it because it's New York City. But now there's going to be probably extra steps or extra caution. We're now getting a reputation as being more violent than we've ever been or dangerous than we always had a danger thing, but I really didn't think it was that.
Is it really real. Is it a lot more dangerous in New York right now?
There's starting to be some weird stuff. And again, that might go away with more people being around. I think crime happens where it's not going to get caught. But if there's people, you'd be walking around at midnight in Manhattan and you would think it's 7 p.m. on a Saturday when it's really midnight on a Tuesday because it's Manhattan and there's always something going on and people are always doing stuff. But now, I've done little shows where it's 9 o'clock on a Saturday and I see 7 people in Manhattan. So I think in certain areas it has come up. There's been a lot more weirder crime. I've been even more nervous on the train than I've been in years.
You got kicked.
I got kicked.
In the back of the leg. What weirder crime? Sorry, I'm just
a girl. I wish they gave more information, but a woman just pushed another woman trying to like get her in front of a train. Luckily she just smacked the train and luckily police were on the platform. I know I'll send you the video. It's insane. They don't know each other, or maybe, there's some scandalous, like whatever, but like literally a crazy woman just pushed another woman. And if you look at it, if it was even like a couple seconds earlier, she would have been in front of the train. Luckily,
oh my God. That's what subway stop?
I don't remember. I was too, okay. and they caught her because there were literally like the footage is caught on the police camera that's on their body. That's why we have even footage of it. But there's just been a bunch of stuff like that kind of weird, aggressive, for what feels like no reason kind of crimes. And that freaks me out. And like I said, there's less people on the train. There's less people on the platform. There's less people outside. But, I'm clearly not helping my case as I'm like, New York City's dangerous. I do think when things come back, it'll be better in all senses. But when are people going to feel safe enough to come back to New York City? When are people going to be able to afford to come visit New York City? When are people going to be able to afford frivolous shows? Like, yes, there's people that didn't lose their job and just worked from home for the last year. But I also know tons of people that when unemployment runs out, they're fucked. And so there is no savings. There is no frivolous money. They're back to just paying bills and living. I haven't really had to think this way in a long time, but clearly we were unessential during this. But when you're broke, we're still unessential. And so I think that's where my fear is that it's going to be a lot harder to do what I used to do and make a living out of it.
Well, shit. No, I'm afraid of that too.
Doomsday, Liz. Okay, let's go into more sadness. Ready for our topic?
Yeah, let's do it.
Our topic this week is hypochondria. Would you consider yourself a hypochondriac?
Not necessarily, but like, I think the fact that we started this podcast, like that's usually the first question I get. It's like, oh, are you hypochondriacs? It's like, no, I don't think that's sensitive to hypochondriacs. Like, I think that a real hypochondriac would be like, fuck off. But I don't pay too much attention to everything my body does, to the point that like I had to stop because like Johnny hears all of it. As soon as I'm just like, my eye feels weird, and he's just like, what? Like, what can I do? And I'm like, I guess nothing. But I'm always convinced like something's broken down, something's wrong. And then I'm usually fine.
In all my research, they're like, do not go on WebMD and fucking look up. And I'm like, that's our podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like everything they tell you not to do. I'm like, are we supporting hypochondriacs? Like, I was like, we might be the problem. I don't feel like either of us are. I think we're anxious, and they do kind of, and I'll bring that up. They kind of bring up anxiety in this because it's known as illness anxiety disorder. So I kind of see hypochondria as an extreme and focused part of anxiety. And I think we just have generalized anxiety disorder. So this is just one of the things we freak out about, as opposed to a hypochondria is like, this is where I channel all my anxiety. What is this? Why does this hurt? I'm scared. My head feels kind of woozy. Do I have cancer? Like, yeah. I think it's one of the many things we freak out about. And hypochondria is like, I'm just going to stay in my lane, which is my body's falling apart and everything is cancer. Okay. So what they kind of say is that a lot of this, somebody becomes a hypochondriac usually because of them being sick as a child, or somebody important to them was sick and probably died. So there's something attached to illness as they're developing that shows it's possible. You know what I mean? Like their life could be taken away, or somebody close to them's lives could be taken away. And then clearly, depending on how that sickness progressed, my dad got kidney cancer when I was 19, I think. And it was like kind of like that. I remember it clearly because my dad had been telling my mom he felt off. That's all. He felt off, but there was no symptoms. He was just like, he just felt off. And my mom kept being like, go to the doctor. But they're doctors and they're kind of know-it-alls. And finally, my dad went to like some like tests everything doctor, because it wasn't anything physical. He just felt off. And I remember he sat me and my siblings down and he goes, so I went to this doctor. My dad is so proud of the story, by the way. He's 45. He goes, they said I had the body of a 20-year-old. And we're like, get to the point, Dad. This is not funny. He goes, the doctor said I had the fitness of a 20-year-old, but I have kidney cancer. And we were like, what? Why do you lead with how awesome and fit you are, you stupid asshole? The fortunate thing is that they found it early. He didn't have to get chemo or radiation. They literally just took one of his kidneys. And like there was a scare for like a year if it progressed and was in his blood. But like, my dad's fine. He doesn't have cancer anymore. But I remember that sparked something, that you could have no symptoms and still be sick. I think that had an effect on me, not to the point where I'm a hypochondriac, but I do know being young and that example of my father literally having almost no symptoms and them just discovering it. And the fact that if he didn't go with that gut feeling of feeling just kind of off, it might have progressed to a point where radiation and chemo had to be a thing and might not even have helped him. So I do wonder if this trauma is what sparks it, that like you had leukemia as a kid, or you had a parent or a guardian that had something where they got really, really sick and almost died, or actually died. And that's what kind of sparks your brain to constantly be looking at every symptom as a possibility that you also might die.
Because the hypochondria and OCD is linked. I had an ex who had OCD. When he was a kid, like his friend died, and the adults in his life didn't really explain it. They didn't make him feel better about it. Before he died, he was like, is my friend going to be okay? And they're like, yeah, it'll be fine. And then he died. And so now he doesn't have trust for anyone. Now, like, basically what I'm trying to say is like shit in your childhood will cause stuff like this, I guess.
I absolutely agree. I'm almost positive my dad has OCD. We all have anxiety. And again, we've talked about this a million times. There's tons of benefits to anxiety that we've utilized, but there's so much of it that is torturous. And hypochondria is such a perfect example of torturous. Hypochondria has your brain spinning and constantly looking for things that are off, and you're never able to really focus. It overrides logic in life. Because like, if you think of it this way, you could die in any which way at any which time, but that's a torturous life to live. A tree could fall on me. A dog could, attack me. A car could hit me. You could live your life like that. And that's how people become, shut-ins and have agoraphobia. And
that's funny. That's how Johnny explains why he doesn't worry about anything. He was like, you could die at any time. You could get mugged. Anybody could murder you at any point. And I was like, anyone can murder you at any point.
I love what's reassuring to one person when you have anxiety. You're like, you shouldn't have told me that. Like, that is horrifying. Because my roommate told me about like a friend of a friend, like that kind of disconnect, that a tree fell on them and that's how they died. And I was like, I hate that I know that now. I hate that could just, they were walking their dog and that's how they died. And I was like, you asshole. Like, I got over my fear of crossing the street. I've gotten over my fear of driving and flying. And now you're telling me I'm scared of trees? Like, I was so mad. And I don't know if you have this kind of practicality. So I find something, I look online. To me, I can read between the lines. And I don't know if it's because my parents are veterinarians and I know what to look for and what not to look for. Actually, WebMD and Healthline and all these kind of websites actually calm me. I really don't go to cancer. I go to, oh, that makes sense. And then sometimes I go, oh, that does seem a little weird. I'll go get it checked out. Then I go and get it checked out and they go, oh no, it's just blah, blah, blah. It's always been like that. As long as I can remember, it's either the internet calms me and I'm just overly paying attention to something because of anxiety, or I am a little worried. I go to a doctor, they give me real advice. But what they said with hypochondriacs is they won't go to the doctor. Like they don't want it to be confirmed. Like they're so terrified and they're in such belief that they do have cancer or whatever, that they won't go to the doctor and have that be confirmed. When really we think about it, I'm going to go to the doctor so they tell me it's not cancer so that I can.
Yeah. Or they'll, the doctor will say there's nothing there, test are fine, test are clear. And they're like, don't believe you. You're not right.
And they'll keep getting second opinions and blah, blah, blah. Like even seeing the doctor and having it's not cancer isn't enough for them to calm them. I feel fortunate that I have some part of my brain that lives with logic, that the logic can turn on and diffuse the anxiety. And it makes me wonder, like, could a hypochondriac ever become a doctor? Like, would that help them or would that make it worse? Because they have all the knowledge of everything that could go wrong in your body.
Yeah, doctor, I think I'm going to die. You might actually die. I don't know.
That's like a sketch in my mind, though. Like, hypochondriac doctor. You're like, hey, this isn't a big deal, is it? It could be. We should test it. It's not that, but there's like 80 other things it could be. We should do all the tests. And you're like, are you trying to get all this money out of me? He's like, no, it's hypochondriac doctor. Am I being scammed or are they scary?
I don't know how to add to that. It was just pure perfect because it had the theme song, the scenario.
Jazz hands. What I found interesting, because when I was reading up on hypochondria, they brought up Munchausen syndrome, which if you don't know, Munchausen syndrome is when someone pretends to be ill or literally makes themselves ill for attention. I've always found that fascinating because either they were sick as a kid and that's how they got love and attention from their parents, so they recreate it as an adult, or someone in their life was sick and they got all the attention and they had neglect and they now know that's how you get attention. So they recreate that as they get older as a form of getting attention.
I was just thinking back on like who I watched die in my childhood thing is
sorry, I don't mean to laugh at that.
It's a funny way to put it. All of my relatives were in Egypt, and whenever any of them died, my parents would just say they died. My dad told me my cousin was sick, and I was like, sick how? Like, he was like, I have to call him. Do you have his number? I was like, sick how? He goes, I don't know. That's all I know. It's like, what kind of conversations do you have, Dad? Like where somebody calls you and goes, so-and-so sick. And he goes, okay. And then hangs up. Like what, How do you not have any follow-up questions? But that's how it's been my whole life, is that when someone dies, they just died. And I don't know if they just didn't want to like bother me with the details, or they didn't know the details, or didn't think they could ask the details, but like
it's the second question. It's the second
question. How did they die?
That's the craziest thing about your dad. It's not the 8th question. It's, hey, blah, blah, blah died. And then you go, oh, how did they die? A tree? Cancer? They were abducted? Like, how did they die? It's the next, you know,
in my childhood mind, in my little child mind, people just lay down and then they just go. Like, they're just dead now. They were alive, now they're dead.
That's actually the worst, because I've had friends die in their sleep, and you're like, okay, what malfunctioned? Because I go to sleep every night and I wake up. What like, that's not enough of an answer for me. That's where I am.
My cousin had a stroke. What's he having a stroke for? Why did he have a stroke?
I like how angry you are. What is he having a stroke for? That's inappropriate.
I'm terrified. I'm so scared of aneurysms and strokes, because those are the things where you just boom, you're done.
Do they run in families?
I don't know. My family wouldn't have any idea. You know how frustrated doctors are when they're like, do you have a family history of this? I'm like, got me. I don't know, buddy, if you can find out.
I'm like, I remember, because really it's just my dad had kidney cancer and we're all batshit crazy. Because they're like, you know, those sheets are just like any mental illness. I was like, all of them. And they're like physical stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. I think my dad has high blood pressure. I was like, I don't know. One, we're just barely connected to our family, but also I probably should, like, my grandfather, who I never met, died of a heart attack. I don't know why. I should, maybe my heart, every time I'm doing my little rantiness, my poor little heart. This is where it is, right? I got distracted. I was like, all of a sudden I was like, I don't think I eat that much bacon, but I do scream a lot, and that can't be good. That would be infuriating, not knowing how somebody died. Not even in like a morbid way, just in a like feel bad way. Just like, I want to feel bad about how this happened. And then it goes to the next level of just being scared that it's going to happen to me. That's like the 3rd or 4th feeling.
I guess when you don't.
I was gonna say, do you have any hypochondriacs in your life?
No, but I just realized I have a cousin that I think like she's probably a mix of what is it called when you're always worried somebody's gonna die? Like, she was like overprotective of her daughter, but like in a fearful way. Like, you're gonna die. Like, if you do anything, you'll die. And like, who's always praying and.
Oh, there is a word for that. I don't know what it is.
I feel like it's a bit OCD, but like also. Hang on.
The like opposite of Munchausen syndrome is when somebody poisons somebody so they can take care of them.
I mean, I don't think she was actively keeping her.
No, but it's like a form of it. So there's people that like poison their daughters or poison their husbands and always have them sick, so they're like, they can take care of them because they need to take care of somebody. And that's something crazy. But then there's also what you're talking about, which is this constant worry something bad is, that might just be fucking anxiety. I don't know. And it's just,
I mean, like I had overprotective parents, but my cousin was like, even my parents were like, chill out, you know?
Yeah.
And she actually, my cousin's daughter actually like grew up, got married, and was like, I'm gonna put up this boundary. And
for her.
Yeah, I was really impressed. I'm really bad at boundaries. And she was like, no more.
You know, it's whatever, helicopter parents times 100. There is a word for it. I wish I knew what it was. Anybody? I have a friend, she's a close friend that I see very often, and I'm almost positive she's a hypochondriac. Like, it's just, she's always going to, and like, she goes to the doctor, so I'll give her that, but always going to the doctor, always thinks something's up. She has a dog now, and I feel kind of good because she'll, like, I think the same way she fears for herself, she'll feel for her dog. She'll text me and she's like, I think I have to go to the emergency. And I was like, it's just an upset stomach. I know I'm a non-vet, but I promise you it's just an upset stomach. Unless they're shitting blood, nothing in 24 hours is going to kill this dog. Take away its food, monitor it, give food again in 24 hours if it's not throwing up, but you don't. And so she's like, you've saved me so much money. But I was just like, I get it. Like, my cat like sleeps a little longer than she normally does, which she does all day. And I'm like, she's dying. Like, you know, I get when you love something and and it's better to be safe than sorry. But I get an upset stomach and I don't think I need to go to the emergency room. Why would you do that for a puppy? I do worry about her. In the beginning, it was just like, oh, she's a little crazy. And then we've been friends for a really long time. I'm like, I think that's hypochondria. That has to be what it is. Luckily, she goes to the doctor, and I think the doctor does turn it off for her. So I think that is something that's helpful. But I don't know what she would do if she didn't have insurance. like it's like, what if you're a hypochondriac without insurance?
The NHS, because they're free, they don't indulge as much as an American doctor might.
Oh, that's
so
interesting.
like if I'm like, oh, I think I might have arthritis, which I did say to a doctor. I was like, it's just not moving all that well. And he was like, well, if you have arthritis, there's nothing we can do. So, I mean, and Johnny was like, your arm needs to be falling off if you want me to do something about it. Not, I think I might have arthritis.
Like that's like I've done shows where they're like, how can you tell if someone's American? And I'm like, I know. Like I'm always about customer service. Like I'm just like, these avocados aren't perfect. And they're like, how to spot an American. But I think that I might have arthritis while doing whatever these like twinkly piano hands that you just did. It might be my favorite thing where you're like,
it's just not
elbows aren't an elbow.
Yes,
I think they should be. And in America, they're like, we'll love to have your money. Let's check out these weird finger elbow problems.
What kind of drugs do you want?
Exactly. They're just like, would you like opioids for your fingers? And you're like, if that's how you solve it, I would love opioids.
Yeah.
And then NHS is like, if you fucking call us again for this nonsense, let me know when your knees creak and you can't get up again, and we'll think about helping you.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, it's amazing. So the other thing I did, they basically, what I learned is it's hard to treat, but because it is an anxiety disorder, they do treat it with anti-anxiety meds are used. Antidepressants are often used, like Prozac and Luvox. I've never heard of that antidepressant. And then cognitive behavioral therapy also does work. So there are tangible ways that it has helped them, which only reinforces this belief that it's something that was set in childhood trauma. We always come back to childhood trauma. It's something that's set in childhood trauma that gets played out as an adult. What is nice is that they say it's kind of hard to treat, but there is some kind of mix of some of the medications and therapy that can kind of help at least make it less torturous. But yeah, I would love to hear about anybody that has either struggled with it or understands more about it, because I do think it's misunderstood, even though it's been in the zeitgeist. And yeah, you can write to us at 2non-doctors@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye.